How to study NCERT for NEET. Okay, before we start the chapter, let's talk about something very important. How should you actually study NCERT for NEET? First thing you need to understand, almost 90 to 95% of your biology questions come directly from NCERT. So this book is not just important, it is everything for your preparation. But many students make one mistake. They just read the lines or try to memorize them. That's not enough. So, what should you do instead? Follow a simple method. Read, understand, and break it down line by line. And while reading, don't just move your eyes over the text, focus on important terms. Try to understand what they actually mean and don't ignore diagrams. They are very important. Now, from exam point of view, many questions come directly from NCERT lines, especially a session reason type question. So, one small tip from me, don't try to memorize everything blindly, just understand the concept clearly and revise it regularly. Trust me, if you follow this method, NCERT will become your strongest weapon for NEET. Now, let's start the chapter. Okay, now let's begin with our first topic, Introduction to the Living World. When we look around us, we see many different types of living organisms like plants, animals, birds, and microbes. We cannot even see them with our naked eye. This variety of life is what we call the living world. Now let's go back to earlier times. Early humans could understand the difference between living and non living things. But they did not have such specific knowledge. So, what did they do? They started worshipping nature. Things like fire, sea, or even wind. Now, today we study all these living things in a proper scientific way. This is called biology. So, what is biology? Bio means life and logy means study. So biology is study of life. As time passed, humans became more curious. They started asking questions and this led to science. Now one important question. How are living things different from non-living things? Scientists studied this and found some key differences. Living things show some special characteristics like growth, reproduction, metabolism, communication, consciousness, etc. These features make living organisms different. Also, all living organisms share some similarities. They are connected in many ways. So, in this unit, we will study classification, naming, and identification. So let's start understanding the living world step by step. Now let's talk about an important characteristic of living organisms, growth. So what is growth? Growth means increase in mass or number of individuals. Simple, right? Now let's understand this in different organisms. For example, in plants, growth is continuous. They keep growing throughout their life. On the other hand, in animals, growth is limited. They grow up to a certain age and then it stops. Now, here's something interesting. Even non living things can show growth. For example, crystals. They grow by accumulation of material on their surface. So, what does this mean? Growth is not unique to living organisms. Growth alone cannot define life. It is not a defining characteristic of living organisms. So remember, living things grow, but growth alone does not make something living. Now let's move to another important characteristics of living organisms, reproduction. So what is reproduction? Reproduction means formation of new individuals. In simple words, living organisms produce more organisms like themselves. Now, there are two main types of reproduction. First is sexual reproduction. In this, gametes are involved. And second is asexual reproduction. In this, no gametes are involved. Some common examples of asexual reproductions are fission, budding, and spore formation. Now here comes very important point. Not all living organisms reproduce. For example, sterile worker bees or mules, they are living but they cannot reproduce. So what does this tell us? Reproduction is not present in all living organisms. Reproduction alone cannot define life. It is not a defining characteristic of living organisms. So remember, most living organisms reproduce, but not all. Therefore, reproduction alone is not enough to say something is living. Now, we are going to study the most important characteristic of living organisms, metabolism. So, what is metabolism? Very simple. It is the sum of all biochemical reactions happening inside a living organism. All the reactions going on in the body together, that is metabolism. Metabolism has two main parts, anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism means building up simple substances combined to form complex substances. And catabolism means breaking down. Complex substances break into simpler ones. Now, understand this carefully. All living organisms show metabolism, no matter how small or big they are. In the laboratory, we can perform isolated reactions, but in living organisms, all reactions are connected and coordinated. This is what makes life special. Now, here's the most important point. Non living things do not show metabolism. Only living organisms show metabolism. Metabolism is the defining feature of life. So remember, if metabolism is present, it is living. If metabolism is absent, it is non living. Okay, now let's move to the last and very interesting characteristic, consciousness. So, what is consciousness? It is the ability to sense and respond to stimuli. Simple words, awareness of surroundings. Now, you might be surprised, even plants show consciousness. They respond to light. This is called phototropism. And they also respond to touch. Animals also show consciousness. They respond quickly to change in their surroundings. They helps in their survival, and in humans consciousness is highly developed. We have self awareness. We can think and feel emotions, but non living things do not respond. They have no awareness at all. So what do we understand from this? All uh, all living beings show consciousness, but remember one thing: metabolism is a defining property of life, and consciousness is the hallmark of living. So, living organisms are aware of their surroundings and they respond to stimuli. Simple, right?